Motherhood is challenging and rewarding, and it's time we discuss the truth about motherhood, our own feelings and desires, why we mom shame, and how we can start standing together. Motherhood is a lifetime of different phases, all while we are expected to manage the weight of life. It's time for us moms to not only help each other by giving a hand, but push each other to explore ourselves on our deepest levels. Welcome to the Mom Still Standing podcast. I'm your mom friend and host, Danielle Lewis. Each week, we will chat with a beautiful mom who is navigating motherhood and life in a special way. My goal, moms, is for us to understand we are more alike than we are different and that we shouldn't mom alone. So join us as we celebrate and honor motherhood. Now go grab your favorite beverage and let's dive in. Hey, mom friends. It's your host, Danielle Lewis. Thank you for being a part of the Mom Still Standing podcast and welcome to this episode. So I want to start this show with a huge thank you. Thank you to all my listeners for listening to my podcast. Thank you for sharing my podcast with other moms. And thank you for sharing how my podcast has really encouraged your heart. And I encourage you to continue to send me your feedback. You can contact me on Instagram at Mom Still Standing, or you can go to my website at www.momstillstanding.com, and you can hit the contact tab and leave me a message there as well. So thank you again so much. I'm so appreciative for all the listeners that I have. So today we have with us Miss Shyron Brailey, and I'm so excited to have her. And we were just chatting beforehand and she's like, we could have recorded this before. I'm like, I know we could have. But whenever we get on the phone and talk, we just get into many different conversations, and it's always very impactful and always a blessing to talk with her. But a little bit about Shyron. She's a mom. She's married and she has a beautifully blended family. She is also a certified life and his coach. So she's a spirit-led Christian coach, and her coaching practice specializes in blended marriages, balance, purpose, and spiritual growth. And as long as I've known her, she's just always had a passion for really helping people and wanting them to live a really fulfilled and balanced life and to be victorious both in the natural and in the spiritual realm. So welcome to our show today, Shyron.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about two very important topics with Shyron. One of them is mending a relationship with your mother. And the other one is we're going to talk a lot about blended families, meaning two people get married or they come into a relationship and I guess one or both of them has children. And how do you blend two families together? And so we're going to delve into that. But first, we're going to start talking a little bit about your relationship with your mom. You're an only child. And as a younger child, you were very, very close to your mom. I think you told me that you all would sometimes wear matching outfits.
Yes.
But then you got to a point where, you all hit a rough patch and your relationship was strained for some years. And it was just very difficult for you all to communicate positively. And so, but we thank God that has turned around and your mom is actually now your biggest supporter,
Yes.
your best friend, and it's just a totally different relationship. And so I wanted to really talk about this because I know that there are moms out there that wish that they had a better relationship with their mother. And sometimes we just don't know how to get there. We don't know how to get to the point of healing and reconciliation. And it's a process. So let's talk about what that process looked like for you and maybe some fears you had or just some hesitancy about even wanting to really connect with her and get past some of the deep wounds that you had.
So for my mom and I think a lot of it, aside from being a teenager and think I know everything in that stage, but getting through that stage, as I got older, around 18, I got pregnant in college or technical school. And when I came back, one of the things was that the suggestion from the church that she was attending was to put my son up for adoption. At that time, they thought it would be the best thing, and I would have a second chance at life, and everything would be able to move forward from there. But for me, it was very emotional because if you carry a child for 9 months, then you go through the labor, and then I had a C-section, and then leaving the hospital without my son was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and probably the most hurtful thing I've ever experienced. And I don't think anybody could fill that void other than God. But I mean, humanly, there was nobody that could fill that void, and not even my mom. And I believe at some point each year, as the pain around that birthday came, I think I started to build a resentment because of that decision, and it was towards her. So there was some like an undercurrent going on. It looks like the boat is just floating up here, but the undercurrent is I have resentment because I don't have my son. And I felt like where I was just starting a job, which I'm still on now, almost 33 years, I could have taken care of him. And I've named him Timothy because Timothy was raised by his mother and his grandmother. Now, I don't know if that's still his birth name, but that's the name I gave him because that's the place I was at during the time I was pregnant with him. So, and I think the resentment built. And I think sometimes what I really want to say is when we don't address things at the start and we allow it to build up, that's when it really becomes very hard to work through those things, or even remember why you have so much anger, or why we just can't get along, or and things like that. So I think one of the things I really wanted to say or convey is that we have to be willing to confront those things, those hard things, because this was a hard thing and it wasn't easy for me to just talk about it. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought she was pleased, God was pleased, but we got to be willing to talk about them, because if we don't talk about them, it's actually hurting us, whether we don't see it, but it does. That's why I call it that undercurrent. So along the way, it just begins to brew and build up to something bigger. So the next thing that happens, which could be small, can be blown up to something big because you already have something brewing. It's like a pot simmering. It's not going to take much to get it to boil because it's already been simmering on low back there. So and so my emotions were already simmering on the back burner. So anything that hit the front burner, we was already automatically going to be something that was boiling, a boiling issue at this time, or boiling emotions now, or boiling anger. So that was one of the biggest things with my mom.
So you
Like
were about what, 18, 19?
about 18.
Okay. And so yeah, that in itself, like you said, to have to carry your child and then give your child up, and it was a decision that you weren't fully comfortable with. It was almost like you didn't have a say.
Right.
It's almost like you were just forced to do this. So then how many years do you think you actually like carried all this until it got to the point where you realized like, I need to talk to my mom. Like I really need to figure out how I can talk to her, because you are now understanding that the reason why there's a lot of friction between you all is because of this thing that has not been addressed for so many years.
That's right.
So
So
what age do you think you were when you started realizing, we got to address this?
I want to say 37,
Wow.
37. I was living in Clayton. So this was around 2004 or five. So I was either 36 or 37. But I mean, I talked to my mom, but I had a toleration, not a love.
Mm-hmm.
I knew my time limit, an hour, 2 hours max, and then I knew I had to leave because something would be said that would irritate me or just rub me, or I should say stir up that pot that's already on the back burner. So it was good. I knew like, okay, I'm gonna go take my kids, we go visit, but I was like, we gonna leave by this time. Like they already knew ahead of time. So I was still talking with her, but we didn't have the relationship like we used to have. It's the same. A lot of people can talk about God, but we don't have that relationship with God. So I think I was talking to her and maybe spending time with her on occasion, but I didn't have that mother-daughter relationship like we should have.
So what was the turning point?
The turning point was when the Holy Spirit began to deal with me and was letting me know that I needed to talk to my mom about the stuff that I was holding in for so many years, which rooted around the adoption of my son, of course, or putting him up for adoption, and just talking about it. And then as stuff you learn as you grow, as you get older, and you start talking to other family members, did you really want me as a child? Because then you start learning other things. So I had to ask some really hard questions because my mom got pregnant with me when she was in high school, her senior year. And back then, you couldn't walk the stage. There was a much stricter guidelines for schools at that time. And so I'm like, were you mad at me because you was pregnant with me? But these are questions you had to ask. And I think we don't want to because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But the truth is we have to ask these things in order to be able to break through the questions and even the pain so that we can get to the healing. And that's the problem. I think I used a term with you before. We do a lot of meringue, but we don't ever get to the pie of the crust. And so the Holy Spirit was telling me I needed to get to the crust, of this pie. And so that was the thing. We wanted to get to the root of the issue. And that was the root of the issue. The root of the issue was why tell her, first of all, that how you felt about putting your son up for adoption. Tell her. Tell her how you felt you could have raised him on your own or with her and that we would have been fine. And tell her, how hurt you were every year when his birthday rolled around. I think the first 5 years was the worst because so many thoughts are going through your mind. Like, I wonder how his parents are, what he looks like, what he likes, what he's doing, how tall. I'm short, but hopefully how tall he might stand, things like that. But so just releasing, because the talking releases. And that's what really provokes the healing is when you begin to talk things out.
Had you been praying to God about your relationship with your mom?
Yes. So it wasn't like just, oh, you need to talk to your mom about this. It was actually an answer to probably continue prayer that, I know that this is not the way things are supposed to be between us. So Lord, how do I fix this? And of course, when we're praying to God about somebody else, he makes us work on ourselves. So that's pretty much how that went. And so he didn't tell me how to fix. He told me what I needed to do.
And I think that's the part that we kind of think, quote unquote, is unfair because it's like, well, she's the mother, she's older, she should come to me and try to figure out what's going on or try to fix it. But I think it's so interesting that God was really working on your heart and was leading you to be the one to initiate this healing process with your mom. And I think one of the things you mentioned was that we have to ask these questions. And a lot of times we don't want to ask those questions because we're really afraid of what the answer is going to be. Like if I ask her if she really wanted me and if she says no, like, oh my gosh, that's going to hurt, So I think it's twofold. We don't want to ask because it's just difficult. We don't want to ask because we're afraid of the answer.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And of course, we always guard ourselves against further hurt. So when you're afraid of the answer, you're just afraid you don't want to be hurt anymore. You don't want further hurt. So
I guess during that process, you had prayed, God is beginning to answer your prayer. He's beginning to move upon your heart. He's beginning to show you what he wants you to do in this process. Was there any resistance or were you like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to just do this? Was it like immediate obedience or was it like delayed obedience, which is really disobedience, but.
Right. No, it was immediate obedience and it required me and my 3 children at the time to go down to her home and visit. I thought just to visit, but the Holy Spirit said I needed to stay the night and see, because that's something I hadn't been doing over those years that I just explained. I was 37 now, so that was a big challenge for me. Of course, the kids are like, "Oh, we're going to grandma's," the type of thing. But I was like 1 or 2 hours, and I would be good. But I had to stay over, and I did. And we made it through dinner and through watching a movie and stuff, and spent the night. Woke up the next day. I'm making the bed, and I'm thinking, "Oh Lord, I done made it. Yes, I'm good." And that's when he was like, "No, you can't leave until you have that conversation with her, because this ends today." And I really wanted that relationship. So I think that trumped my fears of being further hurt or anything, because I wanted that relationship with my mom. I know how it used to be when I was younger, and how we, like I said, we would dress to get alike. When I graduated high school, she graduated college the same year because she did night school. So we just had, I wanted that back. And I know that that's the way it should be. And so I did. And that's when we had that conversation that morning. All the questions were answered. We cried, and then we prayed together. And I prayed. So God did what he said. I just had to be obedient. He was answering my prayer, first of all, but I still had to be obedient. And then I had to be willing to let my desire to want that relationship outweigh the fear of what I might hear in the answer.
Mm. So I know that was God because a lot of times most people are so afraid of the answer, or just afraid of just going through that process because there's so much pain. It's so much pain. And so I think you describing this really shows that we need God in these really tough moments of, especially with relationships, but we need him, period. And so, because there's just some things we just can't do without his strength and without his hope and without his help and without his guidance. But even having him with you through this whole process, because he's leading and guiding you, he's telling you exactly what he wants you to do. Were you still prepared to just be like fully honest with her about how you were feeling and how you have felt over these years?
Yes, by this time, I was ready to be fully honest. I didn't really hold anything back. It was very respectful, but I still expressed, again, all the emotions that I was having around my son and him being put up for adoption, and even the church, because for a while I was mad at her church of even suggesting it. So it was a lot of stuff that I had to forgive. But the one thing in this, love covers a multitude of sins, but love conquers all. Love never fails. First Corinthians tells us. And in this whole scenario, that's what I saw. I saw love prevailing through it all. If you're willing to be obedient to God, and if your desire is that much stronger that you know what, I don't even care if you didn't want me. It doesn't matter, because I'm here now. And that wasn't her answer. But I'm just saying that had to trump my desire to restore this relationship, had to trump any answer I could have possibly heard. But it rested in the fact that love never fails. At this part, God was dealing with my love walk, and I had to walk the love walk out. And this is what it is. And it does cover a multitude of sins. When you truly love with a pure love, it's really nothing that that person can do that will ever take that love away. It's kind of how God says, nothing can pluck you out of my hand. He loves us. If you make your bed in hell, I'm there with you. That's how much he loves us. He said, I know you're going to make mistakes. So I'm letting you know now, I'm going to be with you even when you make your bed in hell. That's how true love is. And when we read First Corinthians, love is broken down to let us know what love is and what love is not. Love keeps no record of wrong. Love is not rude. So when you start really trying to walk this love walk, and you start analyzing yourself against these things, you got to be on this side to love what love is, and realize and identify what the love is not. And when you follow that, love never fails. That's what it says in First Corinthians. And that's really what I got out of that this was a real love walk. And I think my love walk for everybody changed when that changed.
Mm.
And my favorite saying is, I love you more. But God took me through something to be able to have that type of love walk where I love everybody, and I don't have a judgmental spirit or bone in my body, because I see the soul. And like I said, when you see the love, and God says, love never fails. Love covers a multitude of sins. And how many times do we forgive our brother? 70 times 7. So when that stays on my mind with how he dealt with me, that's how I'm able to have such a strong love walk. I think I'm always telling people, nope, you're not going to outlove me, so you might as well let me have it. I love you more, and I really do mean it, because I know what God took me through. And that was a situation that actually cracked or broke, be able to have that type of love walk.
Mm. That's so beautiful.
It was bigger than just our relationship as mother and daughter. It was really my relationship with God and everybody that he would allow me to come in contact with.
That's beautiful. So, what advice would you give to a woman that is listening right now and she really has a desire to really reconcile with her mom and really get past some old wounds, but she's not there. She's not in that place where she's like, I love my mom more than I, fear having this conversation. What advice would you give to that woman that may be just listening and struggling? Like, I desire that deeply, but I don't know if I can walk that out.
One, you can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens you, because that's where the strength is going to come. And I hate to say this, but how bad do you want it? And I don't mean this in a cold way, because I know fear can be really strong. But like I said, we got to really want that relationship more than being worried about our feelings. Like, we got to break through this. It has to be some type of determination that this is what I want. And God forbid, in today's world, people are leaving here every day, young, old, it doesn't matter. And how would you feel if your mom was gone and you never had the opportunity, or you never took the initiative? I don't care who's older. How bad do you want that relationship? And now you don't have that opportunity. Too many people living with guilt now because their mom is gone and they never had a chance, or they weren't speaking for years. And, you know, and I know God can heal all wounds, but why have to even go through that when you have the power now? You have the power of choice now to say, this is not of God. God didn't create families to be this way, first of all. So that's the first reason we need to get it correct. Second of all, what are we passing down to our children generationally? Another generational curse, as if we don't have enough in our bloodline, So, and then you just just think about that and really think about, does that outweigh whatever could be hindering you from speaking to each other or working on restoring? And then I say working because I'm not saying this happened overnight. I said that was the day it broke, but there was still a process. I had to choose to go visit. I had to choose to stay longer. I had to choose to spend the night. I had to choose to invite her to go on a trip with us, or, just go away. I had to choose those things, but it was a process. We didn't just bam, shazam, and we was there. But God did the initial breaking of that hard heart and of that ground. And then now we had to tend it by our actions. And so that's what I'm saying. So I'm not saying this is overnight, but I'm saying just think about, if something, God forbid, should happen, how would you feel about that?
So take it one step at a time. I think something else good to mention is that if you need help with the process, like reach out to someone that maybe you trust,
Yes.
A counselor or a mentor, or, someone in your family that you really trust to really help you walk through this process. If you just feel like I just can't do this by myself. But I think allowing time for healing and restoration to take place as well. And when we talked before, you said, I love this. You said, and celebrate each step.
Right. Yes.
Celebrate each step and just start where you are. It's like sometimes we want to go in like full force and like deal with everything A to Z right away and expecting it all to be resolved. Well, you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. So I'm glad you mentioned that, that night you spent the night and then the next morning was just kind of just the tip of the iceberg. And it was still a process of you making a choice to still show up, to still welcome her, to still love her, everything.
Yes. To let her back in, to come into my home. And it was a lot, but it was a step, like you said. And then you celebrate each step. And each time it got better. And it got so much gooder with my bad English that now we have to talk at least once every day. I mean, that's not just now, but once that process restored, we talk at least once a day. So it's beautiful and it was worth it. And I thank God for my mother. She's my right hand. Like you just said in your introduction, she is at every Coaching for Success event. She's right there supporting every book signing. If I'm a vendor, if she's available, she's right there sitting next to me selling the book. Like, so she is like, if people look at us now, if they to know that story, they're like, oh, no way, no way, no way,
Right.
So,
Well, we thank God for the work that He did within both of you all heart, your heart and her heart, because
yeah.
there had to be something that was working in her heart too to even be open to all of this, to be honest about, what was going on in her mind and her heart years ago when all of this started. So I just thank God for how He has restored your relationship with your mom. And I just hope that any moms listening that may, like I said, desiring to have a better relationship with their mom, that you would just pray and just ask God to just show you what is that first step that you need to take. We're not worried about the whole process right now. Just ask God to show you what's that first step that you need to take. And then trust as you take that first step that He'll be right there and He'll show you the next step.
Mm.
And know that His will be done for you and your mom. And this really just applies to any relationship, really. It doesn't even, it could be your dad, it could be your sister, it could be anyone. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I was one of those people. I didn't know. I've been with you and your mom a lot, and I never knew that there was a point in time where there was a strained relationship, because y'all are like two peas in a pod, like, so I'm even grateful for the relationship that has now been restored. So we want to start talking about blended families. Oh my goodness. And you do a lot of coaching with blended families. You have part of what you do is called God's Blended Best, and I'll let you explain what that is. But the first thing I want to mention is that I said that you're a mom, but you're also a bonus mom. And you do not use the word step. You don't say
Right.
stepchild. You don't say stepmom. And it was very interesting when you were explaining that to me. You were saying that you don't do that because it creates distance. And so I want you to tell us about God's Blended Best, and then elaborate more on why it's so important to use bonus mom and really take step out of your vocabulary.
So God's Blended Best was birthed because I have been every position of a blended family. I've been the bonus child, or what the world calls stepchild. I've been the bonus mother in a previous marriage where I had no children, but my ex-husband had children. And then I began to have children. So I've had that stage of being just a bonus mom, and then being a bonus mom and starting to have my own natural children. And then now in my current marriage, my husband and I both were married before and had children, and then coming together to take two separate families and blend them into one cohesive family unit. That was the biggest challenge, I should say, with God's Blended Best. So that is probably where it was birthed, because I really do understand it from every angle.
How many children in your current family right now?
They are 5 and 2 grands, but I would say 6 because my grandson was with me till he was 5.
Oh, yeah.
So we had 6 at the time when my husband and I met. He was only 2 months old. So yeah, so it was 6 and made 8 of us. So we were 8 is enough.
Wow.
So yeah.
And so the reason why we use bonus instead of step is because
If you look at the word step, whatever, whether it's stepmother, since we're talking to moms, that step hyphen mother is almost like a stiff arm. It's almost like saying you're only going to get so close. You're here, you're in the family, but you're only going to be this close. And that's why we say stepdaughter or step. It differentiates and puts already a negative connotation on something, like that step. Oh, that's not mine, but they here, but they ain't mine, or it just puts a stiff arm in there. So I've never liked that word. I know how I felt as a child hearing that word. When my stepfather would say, "Oh, this is my stepdaughter, Shyron," it kind of felt like like a black sheep type thing. I don't know, but I learned to use the word bonus. And actually, when I used to introduce my children, I would just say their name, my biological and my bonus children. I would just say, this is my daughter Kiera, my daughter Tanisha, my daughter Jasmine, my son Terrence, my son Terrell, and my grandson Malachi. Nobody really needs to know whether I birthed them or not.
That's a good point.
I mean, really, what does it matter? Because you're really just making a point when you're saying that.
That
Like,
is a
okay,
very good point.
it's like saying these are mine, and then these are my steps, which I don't like to say, but my stepchildren. So I just would just introduce them. It's up to people that know which ones are yours and have been in your life long enough or not. But then again, if they don't know you, what does it matter? It really doesn't matter. But it also will draw the children closer. I know I feel closer if I'm just introduced as Sharon and not, this is my stepdaughter, Sharon. Then it's like, this is my daughter, Sharon, or this, it feels more close, and it feels like you matter, like you're a part, truly a part of the family. And that's
Mm,
what's really important. And so I've
mm,
always tried to use the word bonus when I talk about my bonus children, or if I'm differentiating for writing purposes or teaching, I'll say my biological children or my bonus children, but I will never use the word step. I'm not saying that that's wrong, because that is the culture to use that word. I'm just saying, for me, in my heart, that I was given the word bonus to use. So
mm. And
that's just
we hear it more often now. We actually do hear that more often.
okay.
Yeah. So why do you think that the merging of families, the blending of families is so difficult?
Because you're taking two separate units and trying to mesh them into one cohesive family unit. And then you have to remember that each set of children, if you have sets or just whichever side that has the children, they really, in their back of their minds, they always want to see their parents together, their biological parents together. So they're already starting out on the, I don't want to say the negative, but they're always on the negative side, because that's the case. And then decide wants to see their biological parents together. And sometimes children can be manipulative, and sometimes they can even try to cause disturbances or disruptions in your home because they know that. And the ideal is to try to engraft everybody and get to know one and get to know the children during that dating process, so that they don't feel forced into a family. Nobody wants to be forced into a family, but they don't mind being courted into a family. Just like the husband and the wife is dating, you kind of have to spend time with the children as well to make sure you're getting to know them as well before you jump into marriage. Because we're happy, but we're expecting that, oh, they're just gonna fall in line. Everybody else is happy too, but they have their own emotions that they're dealing with. Because divorce is always hard, whether you were married or not. But the fact that if that person was in your life, and raising you, whether you're married or not, that's always hard when that is cut off and things are changed. So they're going through emotionally. And I think the way they only know is that I just want my family back, because that's when I was happy. I want my biological parents. So just have to incorporate them, and you have to be consistent with all the children. You don't show favoritism. You do for all the children. If I took my daughter, biological daughter, to get her hair done with me, my bonus daughters went with me, went with you also. I didn't just take, one and then come back and she all did up and everybody else not so you have to really incorporate them and include them in everything and be present for all of them, not just your biological one, but for all of them.
So this process actually really, from what I'm hearing you say, it starts with the dating process.
Yes.
At some point, I guess, when the two people realize, okay, we're dating seriously, we're headed towards marriage, we're headed towards something long term. We need to really incorporate, our children into this. And so how do you really approach like blending the families together? And you have this analogy about merging on the highway, and you relate that to blending the families.
Where when you're driving and you're coming on ramp, I guess, to get onto the highway, you don't just drive down the ramp and just get into the traffic, because you have caused an accident. You got to take your time, put your blinker on. You're taking all precautions, is what I'm trying to say, as you merge into that lane and get onto that highway. And it's the same thing when you're merging the two families together. We don't just ram on into the highway because you're going to cause a collision. collision of personalities, collision, of the siblings, collision, of the one parent to the other children and vice versa. You want to take precaution. And part of that precaution is including them ahead of time. Once you said, we know we're going to be serious, now let's start doing stuff with them so that they can get to know you or get to know him and build a relationship as well, because they're building a relationship as well as we are. As we're dating in our relationship, there's a relationship being built with those children as well. And of course, this is once you know that you guys are being serious, and you're moving forward in that relationship. And so that's what's really important. And I'm very thankful that my bonus daughter, the oldest bonus daughter, was a very much part of our cohesiveness coming together, because she even went with me to get my dress. So I just felt like it was just a special a bond because she was included in the beginning. It wasn't like, oh, I'm getting married, that this is going to be your bonus mom.
Right. And it wasn't a us and them.
Yeah, that's part of my teaching. Yeah, we got to stop the us and them and learn how to just bring everything together.
I like that. And so one of the other things that you have mentioned, which you're very big on, is really being present.
Yes.
Being present and being fair. And that starts with both of the two people. So for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about the husband and wife. It starts with the husband and wife first setting that foundation that we are a family unit, and it's not us and them, it's we. And establishing, I guess what fairness looks like as well, but then just really, really being present. And when we talked, you said you have to be present for all the children. So it's not that just Danielle is just only present and only attending basketball games for her two boys, but she's present and she's going to whatever sports events for all the children as much as possible.
Right.
And the same with communication, like the communication, includes everyone. And so I know you said with you and your husband that you all had to actually talk to the children. And it was like your husband had to tell them that he was not trying to replace their dad.
Right.
And I think that children need to know that, because, and it also depends when all of this blending is taking place. I've heard lots of stories, and it seems like those middle school kind of teenage years are a very difficult time for this to be happening. And so I think it is very important, as you have said before, is to set boundaries, but to let the children know, I'm not trying to replace your mom or your dad,
Right. Exactly.
So talk a little bit about that, and really, really what the parent is really trying to establish is really respect, not so much I'm trying to be your dad or your mom.
That was the key word right there. One of the things that we said is that I'm not trying to replace your mom, but I will be respected as such. And that's the key word was respect. So you don't have to call me mom. You can call me Miss Shyron, but you don't have to call me mom. I'm not trying to replace your mom. But this household, this family, this is what is required. The respect is required. So I'm going to be there for you for whatever, but we never forced them to call us anything other than Mr. Henry or Miss Sharon, like that was it. As the relationships grow and you spend more time together, they develop their own names for us. And thankfully, it's not stepmom, stepdad. It's more like Pops and Esma, stuff like that. So little names, because we developed that, but we set that foundation early. And I think I was telling you before, and I teach this when we do God's Blended Best, is that the order for marriage does not change because we're blended. So God's order is still the same, whether you're a new family that don't have any children, been married before, or you're a blended, couple coming together and trying to mesh together. That order is still the same. So we still have the husband, the wife, the children. And I think that's the boundaries that we were really trying to set. And also reassuring them that nobody's trying to replace anybody. I encourage them to have good relationship with their mom, but that we were there, but that this is the order that this house was following, and that, but you would just have to do respect us. I'm not saying you have to call us mom or dad, but definitely you have to show respect.
And then I think, like anything else, it's you have to don't move too fast. Because just like you gave the
Right.
analogy of moving on the highway, it's like you have to let this process happen kind of at its own pace. You don't want to be forcing the children, well, you got to like her, or whatever the case may be, because it's going to take time. And I like how you said previously is that the blending process is not cookie cutter.
No, it's not. No, it's every relationship has to do it based on what the two agree upon, the husband and the wife. Was what you two agree upon. What worked for me might not work for someone else because you have so many other moving parts, and it depends on where everybody is and where everybody's maturity level is at that time. So I can say one thing, but if you're dealing with, if the co-parent is not as one that's working together with you, then that's where you got to set other boundaries, so it could be a little more challenging. So like I said, marriage is hard in and of itself, but blended marriages just have more challenges that they have to face because of the co-parenting, and depending on where the co-parents are in their maturity and how they feel about all of this as well. And hopefully that they're not speaking things to the children that would kind of cause them to have a negative attitude towards you. So it's so many different caveats. You just have to go with whatever you and your husband, but you got to have a strong front, a unified front. And I think that's the first thing I talk about is that unified front, because a husband and wife have to be unified. And that's why those boundaries have to be set and adhered to keep that unified front strong and make sure that that everyone is protected. Boundaries is not, it doesn't imprison you, it's actually freedom, because you know how far you can go, but it also protects you, and it protects your marriage. So that's why that is very, very important.
How important do you think premarital counseling is for blended families?
150% is necessary. I think especially for blended families, because the male and the female can be so in awe with each other, but you really have to talk some things out ahead of time, because I think what happens is people find out later that I'm not willing to deal with all of this. That's why I say it depends on the co-parents and what's going on and the children. So they need to really talk about stuff ahead of time. So that premarital counseling for blended families is vital, totally necessary, to answer your question.
What else do you feel like is important for like a new blended family to have as like a support system?
Other blended families.
Oh, okay. Healthy, other healthy.
Healthy blended families. I was going to say ones that you trust. Let me say that too, because sometimes you feel like you're the only one going through stuff. That's with anything, right? But especially in that situation. But if you have someone that has been there where you're trying to get to, and they're able to help talk you through it and give you some suggestions and be a support system for you. So that's really important. It's just like with anything else, that support system is really important, but it has to be people you trust and that are in there. Because a lot of times people can give you advice that's not in the blended marriage, but they don't understand because they never had to deal with a co-parent, another with the children's mom, or any games that be going on, or just stuff that happens with that, or vice versa. A guy may not have dealt with, another co-parent, another father, and the games of things that they could play. So they can give you advice about marriage in general, but when it comes to all those other caveats, the challenges I like to call them, that's where you need people that are in the same situation and that have gone through and can help give you some nuggets to help you keep moving forward successfully, in that blended marriage, because that's really important, is that support system.
What does God's blended best offer families?
We can offer you the premarital. We hope to offer the premarital counseling, because that's really the important part, because you can lay everything out. As they say, put the hog on the table. You can put everything on there, down to the apple and the ring, with the earring, and just put it all out there. And then really, I think then both parties are more prepared for that marriage or what they're about to get into, because I think the reason why the divorce rate is where it is because you get caught up in the love part, but the reality of what the challenges you're going to face are not talked about ahead of time. Doesn't mean you can't overcome those challenges. I'm not saying that, but it's best to be prepared for those challenges ahead of time. So I think that's one of the things that I love. I know my husband does too. If there's a couple that wants, a male, the father wants a male present thing, he loves doing that and talking with men, because if you can catch it there, you can you mostly can save a life. They say when you go to the doctor, they call it preventative care. That's what I was. It's like preventative care for marriage for that blended family, that you can kind of catch it here and you won't have to deal with this major surgery and all this medication for the rest of your marriage, you know. Uh, so you can have a healthy marriage, for a healthy blended marriage for the rest of your life. And that's important. And I think having that support group where you have someone, especially for me, I love helping women. So those blended moms, I love talking to them and helping them. Do I have every answer? No, but God does, you know. And I can tell you from experience, from every angle that I've been in blended families, from the child to the mother to the bonus mother, I can give experience nuggets as well. But that support I'm really big on that support, because I know these marriages can work. We just have to work it. Marriages work, but we have to work it, and you have to do those things that you already mentioned and recapped.
Yeah, that's good. And I just want to just note that the blending process, although it's challenging, I think that just like anything else, if you want it to be something that's healthy and loving and all those things, is that you have to work at it. But what I hear you saying is that there is some work that needs to be done on the front end of it before you actually jump into this thing. And so I think people need to really keep that in mind, because we get caught up in the whole love thing between me and this person, but not realizing that these children are involved in this relationship, and those children have the ability to really change the dynamic of the relationship in the marriage. So it seems like definitely some premarital counseling up front is needed, linking arms with other families that have healthy blended families. And then just asking for what you need, like not trying to do this by yourself is very important as well, because we're not called to do life by ourselves anyway. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing about your mom, and just thanking God for how he has restored that relationship. And thank you for just your vision for God's blended best families. And so I want you to tell my listeners how they can get connected with you, how they can find out more information about your coaching practice, and definitely God's blended best.
Well, my coaching practice is called Coaching for Success, Moving You Forward. And you can reach me at Shyron Brailey at coaching, the letter U, for success.com. And I probably will have to spell that, because Shyron is spelled ShyronBrailey. That's Shyron Brailey at coaching, the letter U, for success.com. That's the best way to reach me, is via email. Of course, once that email is sent, I will connect then by phone to discuss things further. I also have a website, is www.coaching, the letter U, for success.com. And that's www.coaching, the letter U, for success.com.
And I almost forgot, you have a book that was released last year. So go ahead and tell my listeners a little bit about your book really quickly, and how they can get their hands on your book.
The book is called Fuel Your Motivation. It's a 31-day devotional to help you to stay focused and to stay motivated, so that you can see your dreams come to fruition. It has a journal at the end of each day with some introspective questions that I ask to try to help you to really be intentional about your day, about your time, about investing in your own vision. I know we work other people's vision 9 to 5, but this is to help you to invest in your own vision after 5. And again, to hopefully one day see your vision come to fruition. It is available on Amazon and Kindle. The book is called Fuel Your Motivation. And again, it's a 31-day daily devotional. And the thing I love is that you can read it over and over, and you can keep journaling, and you can see your success. I always like celebrating every small step of success. So when you go back and you see what you journaled, and this is where I was last time, and this is where I am now. And so this world is so busy, Danielle. And I was just telling my mom this. I said, I think the enemy has duped us with busyness. And we're so busy and we're so tired, and we never really get to purpose. And that's what I like to do. I'm a purpose pusher. So this book, Fuel Your Motivation, is designed to push you into your purpose, but it does it through daily nuggets, because I know we're so busy. Nobody gonna read a whole chapter. So you get one page or maybe a page and a half each day. It's small, but it's powerful and impactful. And it gives you a lot of stuff to marinate on, or to think about or meditate on each day. And then that journaling piece during your quiet time is very important. So if you don't have it, please get it, because it's going to help you. I promise you, it's going to help you. And I'm not saying it just because I wrote it, but it was given to me by God to help you. So I know it's going to help you. Whoever gets it in their hands is going to help you. And one of my favorite things in that book is becoming a master at diffusing distractions, because to me, busyness is a distraction. So even trying to get that in order, but that's my favorite one, is the master of diffusing distractions. Because if we can do that, then we can be more intentional about organizing our day or our nights, depending on what you work, and really being intentional with our time and putting in towards the vision that God has placed inside of us. So thank you.
All right, y'all heard it here. Her 31-day daily motivational journal, Fuel Your Motivation. And so Kindle, and where else did you say?
Amazon.
And Amazon.
Amazon.com. Yep.
So y'all know what to do. If you want to keep moving forward, go get this devotional. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to chat with you and to share your purpose with my audience. And I know I've been blessed by you being a purpose pusher. And so I just thank you. And thank you again for being a part of the Mom Still Standing podcast.
Let's go, moms.
Yay! Let's go, moms. All right. Peace, y'all. Thank you, moms, for tuning into this week's episode of the Mom Still Standing podcast. Make sure you head over to iTunes and subscribe. If you found this episode to be informative and encouraging, please write a review so that we can continue to empower moms everywhere. In the meantime, remember, connected moms don't mom alone.